Ahora tenemos muy poco tiempo, so we will change to English again, Alberto. But sorry for the delay. But the Alberto will explain about the business data space trajectories. So very interesting. I'm excited to hear you, Alberto.
Does it work? Yeah. Okay, so thanks for being here today. I will try to be short because I know that lunchtime is approaching, and you know you've been listening to a lot of presentations, so you definitely don't need like another one today. But I will be short and effective if possible. So I'm Alberto Curato. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Gaia-X, and today I would like to introduce you to the concept of the importance of understanding the trajectories of data spaces, because we have been analyzing data spaces in the last few years. I mean, there have been quite a few use cases that have been successful, but there have also been failures. And these are all relevant data, the relevant information that will allow us to understand actually common patterns that in the end will help us defining and understanding if a data space is viable, can continue its activities, or maybe they need to review their trajectories, meaning like they need to review the business model, they need to review the stage that they are facing at a certain point of their development, and perhaps I may change something to make it better. I don't have a pointer, so okay, here we are. So you will be asking yourself, why is the finance guy of Gaia-X who is giving this presentation on data spaces? I mean, as you can easily imagine, I mean, the biggest and most important part of my work is, I don't know, can someone guess? What can it be? Finance, money, data, budgets? No, it's data spaces. Of course. All right. But enjoy these animations because this is the best I can do. For the rest is only text. Yeah, my nephew can do definitely better at 9. So I would like to start like with a brief introduction of what data spaces are and what, well, principally what a data sharing ecosystem is. We have to think about data sharing ecosystems as a, let's say like a, I don't want to say an elite club, but a data club, you know, something that doesn't provide free access. So in order to be able, I mean, to be inside, I mean, you have to give something. This is important because, for example, contrary to what would be like an open access platform, I mean, those data clubs restrict access only to its members, and they also set conditions for sharing data, getting access to data, and building trust among all those participants actually who want to be part of this mechanism. So it's important also to understand that data spaces, I mean, in general, they follow a certain path, but there is not a rule that fits all data spaces. Data spaces are very specific because of their sector, specific because of the way they are kickstarted, specific because they have there is the presence of a key player, specific because there could be a coordination or a consortium, specific because they have different value propositions that allow actually the beginning of a data space. So we have a few key points that are common through all the data spaces. So the way they are organized, a restricted club where trust is key, because if you don't have trust, participants, they are reluctant to share data. There is always this problem, like what happens if I share data in a group, the others take my data, and nobody gives anything back to me. So especially if you're a smaller player and you're in the same group with bigger player, then you're always concerned, like, what's going to happen about me? What's going to happen about my small contribution? What's going to happen if I don't get the data that I need to grow as a small reality? We also have an important role in the data spaces, which is the orchestrator. The orchestrator actually, has always been there. We focused on the name orchestrator since a couple of years because we think this is the best word to define the role of this entity. It's not a simple coordination, it's really orchestration. Sometimes it can be technical coordination, sometimes it can be commercial coordination, sometimes it's really like an orchestra to direct, because the stakeholders may be different, because the stakeholders may not have all the same needs while joining a data space, because they could be coming from different sectors. So as a result, the orchestrator is really that entity that coordinates the efforts, that ensures that fairness is shared among all the participants, and also that trust is the main feature present in a data sharing ecosystem. This is the development, these are the dynamics, let's say, of the ecosystems that we'll see a bit more into detail a bit later. But mainly what we can say that it's important at the beginning there is technology provider, because we need to understand that ecosystems, often start small. You can't expect a data sharing ecosystem to start immediately with the goal of achieving innovation. This is wrong, because you have to set up a number of key elements from the very beginning in order to allow participants to join, in order to convince them actually that there is added value. So in general, actually, the first added value, short-term goal that we can have is cost saving. So at data sharing ecosystem, I can say, okay, if you guys come together, actually you can achieve like a cost reduction of 10%, on your activities, because I provide you for free a platform where you can share costs, and actually by using this platform you can improve your processes, you can speed up decision making, etc. So this is the first key lesson that we have to learn. Start small, innovation comes after. Of course, the number of participants is important, because more participants join a data space, more data is shared, more accurate the analytics become. And this allows, once there is a sufficient number of contributors and there is integration of the data that is collected, only at that stage we can say, okay, now we can start innovating, meaning like now we can start providing or selling data-based services and start making profit out of it. So starting a revenue stream that allows a data sharing ecosystem to be self-sustaining and financially viable in the long term. So we have identified 4 stages of the data sharing. The first is the digitalization, which means starting by removing, technological barriers, innovating, updating, the IT equipment that the actors have. So, for example, get rid of Excel files, that everybody loves, and replace them with the APIs and with more advanced systems. This will boost efficiency, but it requires also like a big initial investment. And we will see this with the role of the orchestrator. Then we have a real-time data exchange. For example, imagine, there are partners of a consortium. They share, like in real life, data about stock of a specific parts. That exchange, allows actually faster decision because you know exactly what you have available, what you don't have, so you don't waste time actually in, oh, should I order, how much it takes to be delivered, etc. Another stage is the optimization. So it means that participants of in the same data sharing ecosystem must be aligned, so using the same technology, making sure that the data that they share is interoperable. So it means that everybody should be able to read and have access to the same information in the same way. And this also has strategic value. And only at the end, you can create innovation, meaning that only at that point you can say, okay, now everything is set. Now we have all we need. Now all the partners contribute together. The problem of trust has been solved. Everybody sees the added value of being part of a data sharing ecosystem. So now we can put together our efforts and create services that can be either sector specific or they can be cross services. Here we come to the role of the orchestrator. The orchestrator is, by definition, the one that kicks off a data space. It can be a dominant player in a specific sector. It can be a consortium of entities and men who share the same goal. And first of all, it really ensures a few fundamental conditions, which is setting rules, setting governance, making technology available, and also, as I explained before, creating trust among all the participants. This, in 2024, the Gaia-X Institute with the University Paris-Dauphine worked on a study which is called Economics of Data Sharing, where we have analyzed them in the different type of ecosystems, you know, how they work, how the structures, etc. And also what are the main dimensions, under which a data space is developing. Talking about the orchestrators, the orchestrator, as I told you, is a coordinator, you know, someone, who really kicks off the activities, someone who says like, okay, now we have a value proposition, so we can start working on it. And it works in a matrix of 2 times 2, meaning there are 2 scenarios. One is the ecosystem is one-sided. For example, a group of hospitals. A group of hospitals work together. They're all in the same field, you know, it's hospitals, they have patients, they do treatments, and they share information among themselves. The orchestrator in that case could be the biggest hospital in the group that says, okay, internally we use this platform to share information about the patients, about the therapies, etc. So we can give all the other hospitals in the group access to this platform. So everybody uses the same one. They already use it, so they can make it available free of charge. And they ask all the other hospitals of the same group, to share information, on the same platform. This is an orchestrator role, which is super easy, you know, because, there is a major player, everybody, converge on the same value proposition, etc. So this is like a purely technical orchestrator. It doesn't need to do much. It's cheap to run in the long term, and it has a lot of advantages. Then, in the case of a multi-sided ecosystem, let's take, for example, I don't know, a tourism data space. A tourism data space has hotels, railways, has tourism associations, they come together and say, okay, we need to share data in order to have indicators about, for example, I don't know, what's the best period to go to a specific destination, shall we make offers, blah, blah, blah. In that case, it's more complicated because the orchestrator has to deal with different entities that have different interests. So, of course, hotels don't have the same needs of railways or airplanes or airlines. So, in that case, it's really important that the coordinator is able, first of all, to juggle between the different reality and also to offer solutions to everyone. Even if the interest is different, everyone should benefit from being part of the data sharing ecosystem. Then there is another dimension, which is presence of a key player and no key player. If there is no key player, this is the most complicated structure of a data sharing ecosystem, because basically it means that you have to put like a bunch of equals, together, and you have to decide to start something. It's difficult. So in that case, this consortium should come together and say, okay, we decide that this entity X, which could be external, is going to lead the whole process from the beginning till the end. If there is a key player, which is like one of the major stakeholders, in this group of entities, etc., then this can take the lead. They say, okay, I'm the biggest, I can kickstart the operations. I have enough money, to do that. But the other participants might have a concern. Like, what happens if the data that I share is just going to benefit, the big player, and the big player is getting into a dominant position? So what's going to happen about me? And here we go back to the concept of trust that needs to be clarified and defined since the very beginning. Otherwise, there is no incentive for participants to join a data space. So this is a little bit, the visual representation of these different possibilities. So no key actor and one-sided, it's more about the technical intermediation. No key actor, multi-sided, is particularly complex. Then if it's one-sided, in a case of the queue of a presence actor, I told you, this is the example of the hospitals, then it's easy to achieve. Then when it's multi-sided presence of a key actor, coordination is easy, concerns about trust are big. Artificial intelligence was able to tell me at this moment of the presentation what would be the status of the audience. So, yeah, I think it was pretty much realistic. So, to those who don't trust artificial intelligence solutions, this is a proof that you can. I'm gonna go very fast. Who is familiar with Skywise, Airbus Skywise? Whoever heard about Airbus Skywise? Okay. Which is good, because if I say something wrong, actually I can be immediately corrected. So, Airbus is one of the two dominant aircraft manufacturers in the world. We don't say other names, we don't care. Airbus was in a strong position to start up data sharing ecosystem. So in 2017, they decided to partner with Palantir, which is a data analyzing company, to create Skywise. Skywise is basically a platform that analyzes data about airlines. Airbus decided to give access to this platform to airlines for free. This is already like a first step to build trust. Like, hey, a big player in the sector, is giving access for free, and perhaps it might be worth joining. And by mid-2019, if I'm not wrong, there were already 70 airlines that joined Skywise. And at this point, you will ask, like, okay, but what do airlines get, from being part of Skywise? Well, a few strategic advantages. For example, predictive maintenance. By analyzing actually the pattern of sensors in aircrafts, they can already predict if a part of the aircraft would fail or would have problems, which means that they could prevent damages during a flight, for example, or flight canceled because the part broke, whatever. Another one is benchmarking. For example, members share anonymously, data on their fuel consumption in a specific route. So let's say from going from Paris to Madrid. If one of the airlines realizes actually that their fuel consumption for the same route is bigger than the average, then they will understand that there is room for improvement. There's something that they have to perhaps improve themselves. Another one is a technological advantage, because the access to the analytics of Skywise allows even companies, with limited IT instruments to still get access to the insights and to the analysis that Skywise is able to make. Airbus, he made it clear since the very beginning. They said, like, the more participants we have, the more accurate the data will be, and the more accurate the analysis will be. So everybody could benefit if there is like a larger participation. What Airbus gained from this? Well, first of all, a competitive advantage compared to the other that we don't name. Also positioning itself as an innovator in the sector, and also being able to get data and information itself to improve, for example, the design of its aircraft. Because thanks to the data shared, by the airlines, they say, okay, perhaps, this is a recurring problem, and every aircraft that we have, we can do something about it. So this is the typical example of an orchestrator who, of a data sharing ecosystem with an orchestrator who has a leading position and is able to build trust among its participants. One thing that I want to clarify, because like this, it looks super easy, people enter, click, etc. No. Airbus had to spend months of negotiations, lawyers, etc., because building trust is also about making sure that everybody is satisfied with the respect of all the regulations in place, data privacy, antitrust, etc. So there were endless negotiations with different airlines, because don't forget that just because you want to share data, it means that you can. Some companies actually, they have strict policy, where they have specific provisions about what kind of data they can share and under which conditions. So they built trust among its partners, and once the trust actually was clear and it was set, this was also an incentive, for other participants, to join Skywise. This summarizes a little bit what we said till now. It's important actually that, these are challenges that potential joiners in data spaces, have to face. The legal framework, the reassurance that all the conditions, the legal conditions are satisfied, the presence of trust, making sure that the value is shared equally among all the participants, so everybody could benefit from being a member of a data sharing ecosystem. And also that the internal maturity is enough to allow moving forward to the next step of our data sharing ecosystem, which is not only coming together, but also creating and building something, and on top of this, being financially sustainable. This is a little bit the work that we are currently doing, Gaia-X is doing with the Gaia-X Institute and Paris Dauphine. We started with a use case that I will show you in a few seconds. We understood that we selected 10 data spaces that have reached like a certain level of maturity. And now we want to understand under which conditions we can evaluate the maturity of a data space, especially in consideration of the fact that in the next few weeks, not even months, few weeks, national funding that has been generously given in the last few years to kick off data spaces, etc., will come to an end. This was the case in Germany, this was the case in France, for example. And this means that can data spaces, or better, have data spaces been able to reach a configuration that allows them to survive after the end of public funding? Do they have a sustainable business model that allows them actually to continue operations without public funding? Of course, I mean, it's an empirical research, so we will interview these 10 data spaces that we have selected. We're gonna extract all the information that we can, and at the end of it, we will be able to find a number of common denominators that will allow data spaces to say, okay, I'm following the right path, so I will be able to continue my operations, or no, I'm sorry, but I think, I mean, based on these conditions, I mean, perhaps, I mean, I should modify something in the way I'm developing my data sharing ecosystem or my data space. Here, I bring you the example of Ag Data Hub in France. I don't know if you ever heard about Ag Data Hub. Is one of the data spaces, you know, that was built in France, was heavily funded by the government. And it was really like a textbook example of a perfect data sharing ecosystem. Why? Because we had a very important private-public backing. There was a clear value proposition, which was securing the data sharing in agriculture. And there was money, because they got public funding for about 7.3 million. Then you will say, like, what happened? Ag Data Hub went bankrupt in October 2024, and now his activities has been taken over by another company. What went wrong? It's not about money, or only about money. Let me be clear. First of all, Ag Data Hub delayed the initial adoption, meaning that one of the conditions to be able to kickstart the activities was that the farmers should upgrade their IT, the IT dotation that they had available. You understand that in such a fragmented market, this is difficult to reach in the short term, so the initial adoption was delayed. Then, in the when it comes to the diffusion phase, basically this never happened, because in this phase, they were still trying to bridge the gap of this delayed start. They were struggling. They requested additional funds to the French government, because they said, like, okay, we still need time, we still need money actually to kick it off. French government simply said, no, there is no more funds for agriculture. As a consequence, they had to stop, because they didn't reach a maturity level good enough to be self-sustaining, so the business model was not able to make them viable financially in the long term. So, on top of that, 2024, critical year for France. There were more than 60,000 companies, who went bankrupt because, of the inflation, because, the economic conjuncture, etc. So, rising costs, whatever reasons, happened. So, Ag Data Hub failed. What we can learn from this example? Ag Data Hub simply didn't understand its trajectories when they should have. They didn't evaluate early enough their business model how viable was their business model, what were the specific conditions of their business, of the data space, that would allow them to be self-sufficient and self-sustaining. This was the typical case where there was like an initial public funding that allowed to kickstart, so an external actor that kickstarted the activities, made a lot of money available, a key actor who could provide the technology, etc. But this was still not enough because of the specificity of the field of agriculture. What can we learn from all these conditions? What we can learn from Skywise? What we can learn from Ag Data Hub? It's important that the policies to support the data sharing ecosystems are effective. Why? Because we can see, it's in front of the eyes of everyone, that data sharing ecosystems are for the public good. Data sharing ecosystems help improving businesses, help improving coordination in specific sectors, help maximizing profit in specific activities. So it's important that governments and policymakers support the creation and the sustainability of data spaces. We have a legislative framework in place, which is the Data Act and the Data Governance Act, but this is not enough. We shouldn't just make laws and wait. We just have to invest in based on the legal foundations that were given to us. It's also important to ensure fairness. We have to prevent the creation of monopolies, because this is the only way where participants can trust the ecosystem they belong to or that they want to join. And in the end, public institutions can play a catalyst role by, first of all, sharing open data, so they can be a very useful source of information. Second, they can define procurement standards, and they can also ensure regulatory clarity, because only if there are those conditions, we can see a future with a lot of data spaces deployed to the benefit of everyone. Any questions? I guess not. I hope not. You're hungry. Yes. So that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention.